Good evening, Sharks fans and hockey fans all over the world. This is a special edition of Pucknology After Dark. I am Eric, also known as PuckGuy14 on Twitter. I am joined by one of my constituents, Chris JWS, AJ Strong, and Gentry Alexander are semi-healthy scratches. As a special guest, we welcome Chronicle Communist, Brody's occasional right-hand man on Sharks pre- and post-game live over at Comcast Sportsnet, Ross McKeon. Ross, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it as we discuss the big story here in Teal Town, and that is the Sharks mutually parting ways with Todd McLellan. We only have a short time to do this, so let's let everybody know that you can tweet us at PuckGuy14 or at ChrisJWS or on the main one at Pucknology. Use the hashtag Pucknology After Dark. That's how we'll be able to connect to you. All right, Ross, I'll start with you first with what you've known and what's going on in the Sharks front office. Something we kind of saw coming, but then again, we're kind of still surprised that Todd is gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think, throughout the year we saw, at least I noticed, a bit of an emotional disconnect is the best way I can describe it. Sometimes when you talk to Todd, you got the feeling he was distancing himself from the team for whatever reason. Personally, I think he was put in the middle of some difficult situations out of his control, i.e. you go back to last summer and Doug made some comments at probably an emotional time after the Los Angeles series, talked about the leadership changing, going to a younger core. That put Todd in a tough spot. It basically said, well, we have to take it away from Joe Thornton, but Joe Thornton's still going to be in our locker room. So that put Todd in a tough spot. And as you went throughout the season, I get the feeling there were other personnel decisions that they weren't necessarily on the same page on. Brent Burns moving forward late last year and back to defense this year. When he moved back to defense, all of a sudden there's no Dan Boyle, there's no Brad Stewart, and that defense was not as deep as it needed to be to compete in the West. I think some of these things kind of mounted up for Todd. Also, he just would say on a couple of occasions that he didn't feel like the message that was being sent for the previous 6 years was being received by the players for whatever reason. So, for whatever, 7 years, I guess, is a long marriage in the NHL, and it had to come to an end. He's an excellent coach. There were compliments all over the place today in his departure. We don't really know what happened behind closed doors, whether, he came and told Doug Wilson he wanted to leave, and if he had come back and said, I want to stay, I'm not sure that would have done it. I think Doug Wilson probably wanted to see this happen for whatever reason. So he's out the door after 7 years, and the big question is, where do they go moving forward to make it as good or better? But obviously make it better because you want to get back to the playoffs. And anytime you get rid of your coach, you got to know what you're going to do to solve it. And Doug probably has a pretty good idea of that. Didn't necessarily share names, as you wouldn't expect him to, but that's what their big challenge now is, finding the right staff to lead this team going forward.
Got it. Chris, I'll let you jump in, and then I have a couple of questions for Ross.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think Ross summed it up pretty well. I'm hoping, unlike with the 49ers, like we see a lot of parallels between the two, unfortunately. I'm hoping, unlike that situation, they really do have a plan, because that was the thing that was really disappointing about that, was not that Justin let him go, but the lack of a plan afterwards. So I'm hoping that's where the situations will be different. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you just hope that in this situation it is a little different, because we know that Jed York had a say in what transpired with him and Harbaugh. There's a little bit of a distance, okay, maybe a big distance, with it coming from Hasso to Doug. we'll put up this graphic here. We kind of were right before the show figuring out who right now could be available for the Sharks. The exception, of course, being Mike Babcock, still employed with Detroit, but he is essentially a free agent this summer. The big name, of course, goes around is Dan Bilesman, the former Penguins coach. You have John Tortorella as he's won a Stanley Cup, although that one season in Vancouver kind of changed people's minds. Craig Berube, the former Flyers coach, is available. Another one I was thinking of was Guy Boucher, the former Tampa Bay coach. Ross came up with a great one, maybe retashing from what the Sharks did before, was grab an assistant from Detroit, and that's Tony Granato. You also have Randy Carlyle, the former Leafs coach. Dallas Aikens, one time was the hot coaching candidate where Edmonton got him, and then he was quickly let go. The other two are kind of the little wild cards, but it wouldn't be a surprise, though. Current TSN analyst and former Sharks and Leafs coach Ron Wilson, or there's also the way of promoting their AHL coach Roy Sommer, who has his Worcester Sharks, soon to be San Jose Barracuda, as in the playoffs in the American League. So guys, who are the Sharks going to be going after? Is there a certain style? Is there a certain type of play that maybe Doug Wilson's looking for?
Yeah, he mentioned today on the conference call and in the press conference, he's looking for the team to get back to home ice advantage, take advantage of SAP Center, and to do so with a puck possession type team. Now, I don't know any coaches out there that wouldn't coach to be a puck possession team. So, I remember when Todd McLellan took over, the big thing with him in that first year was shots, quality, quantity of shots, direct everything at the net. And that was very effective, and it gave the Sharks an identity. And they would routinely pile up 40 to 50 shots, especially early his first season. They were very effective. That was his thing. Why did they go away from that? I think personnel dictated them going away from that. I think he still wanted to play that way. The way the game is going now, definitely puck possession, skill. You want to stay out of the penalty box. You better capitalize on the power play. With the Sharks moving forward, they're still gonna be adding young players to the mix, and you're still gonna have the Joe Thornton and the Patrick Marleau on your roster. So your coach has to be able to do two things. He has to be able to teach, be patient with young players. He also has to have the respect of an older veteran player. So that's a tricky combination to find. When you look back at that list of yours, I think these coaches aren't available yet, but a guy. Hitchcock from St. Louis, if he loses his job, that's a possibility always. Bruce Boudreau down in Anaheim, I suppose, if he were to lose his job, could be added to that list. But I think what you're looking at are characteristics of a coach and then putting the name with it. And not only just the one name, but Doug Wilson is going to be very interested in hearing who are you bringing on as your assistants, because he talked about building a staff today, and that too is very important. You need a support staff, not just a head coach.
Yes, I think a lot of it also will have to do with how the different pieces land, because the Sharks are probably not the destination guys out there, but as the jobs out there that are open, the more prime jobs, Edmonton, those types, as those coaches land, then we'll see kind of what's left over. I would like to see someone kind of from the Detroit system or Detroit lineage or whatever you want to call it, because that whole group was big on puck possession. I mean, McLellan came from that system, very successful. These players are already familiar with it, so I'd like to see that, and I would be surprised if that's what we end up with.
Yeah, and just looking at Doug's history a little bit, yeah, obviously his only hire for a head coach has been Todd McLellan. He inherited Ron Wilson from Dean Lombardi, a dozen years ago, and fired Ron Wilson. That was basically at the end there was a conflict that he didn't like Wilson, threw Patrick Marleau under the bus. he didn't respect that. He used that as basically the excuse to fire Wilson. So he went to Detroit to pick a guy off a system that he trusted. The other organization that he watches very closely and he respects, like most do, is the Montreal Canadiens. So sometimes you can kind of look at the past and see if there's some combination there that might work. But that's sort of what Doug has done in the past. So short history for him, and we're assuming too that he'll be making the decision. He still has to go in front of Hasso Plattner, and he has to present his plan moving forward, and Hasso has to give him the green light. Then it'll really be Doug making the coaching hire. I don't see any coaching hires happening here in San Jose before he meets with Hasso.
It'll be an interesting scenario as to how everything goes onward, because you have the whole thing with Hasso. I'm assuming he would come and visit rather than just talk to him through teleconference from Germany. You would think there's going to probably be more say for him to get this together, because you have to figure out a GM, and then you have to figure out where Doug is going to go with a coach, and if that coach has a say in naming his assistants. That's going to be one of the big reasons and one of the big things about whether or not Coach A or Coach B want to be here if they can't choose their assistants. We'll go to the tweets really quickly because we got a lot of things asked. Sporting Agenda, Jenny Hockey was saying, Guy Boucher, can you imagine the Sharks running the 3-1? Generation X-Wing, why do you have such a chubby for Bilesma? Is it his shiny cup ring? No, I think he's probably one of the big name coaches that are out there, probably getting more say than anything else. AJ's actually checked in and said, "I'm surprised Wilson didn't announce today instead of naming a head coach he'd be using 4 alternate coaches." As a little sidearm to the joke of the captaincy, but it really is a critical announcement or critical pick, because it kind of dictates where this team is going to go. Do you get a guy like Babcock, who, if you get him, you kind of he's probably going to want to push to win right away, but he also has the way of what's the word I'm looking? But he also knows how to retool on the fly with what the Detroit Red Wings have done since Lidstrom retired.
Absolutely. I mean, Babcock would frankly be the perfect candidate. Because not only Lidstrom retiring, but the mantle basically being passed here from Zetterberg, Datsuk to Nyquist and all the younger Red Wings, and their streak is uninterrupted. They're in the playoffs for a 24th straight year, and the Sharks would love to have continued their playoff streak, obviously. It's going to be interesting. It is a huge hire. You wonder how many hires does a GM get, before he runs out of time. The first one lasted 7 years, so and obviously Todd did a good job. He had respect in that locker room. I did not get the sense that there were very many players that didn't like him. They really did respect him. The staff had the team very well prepared. Those things are going to be important moving forward. You mentioned, would the new coach have a chance to pick his assistants? I think during the interview process, one of the questions that Doug will invariably ask is, who are you interested in bringing aboard with you? And I think part of the decision will be, Doug's not going to say, well, you need to hire these guys. It's going to be, he's going to look at the group that new coach brings in, and they'll kind of weed out whether he wants that person or not. But I think it's a process that's going to take a while. They don't need to have a coach before the draft. They can go a while, and I think he's going to want to see all the people that are available out there. And like you said, too, there could be a little bit of a pecking order with some of the more higher profile jobs. I don't know if you want to say Toronto's more high profile, but that might be an attractive job to a Babcock. I don't know where Philly, falls in terms of how a coach looks at an opportunity. Edmonton, obviously now with McDavid and all those young forwards, maybe somebody feels like, oh, I could fix that. So maybe San Jose slots in, and if St. Louis makes a change, I don't know. Maybe the Sharks fall behind that opening too. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out on both ends, the domino effect, and what the Sharks really pursue doing.
Go ahead, Chris. I was just gonna say, the Sharks outside of Sutter and Wilson have always gone with a coach that hasn't had any NHL head coaching experience. Chris, what do you out of the candidates I put up, and I'll put it up again? What do you think if Doug wants a puck possession team? Out of those, are there anything in particular that you could possibly see Doug or insert general manager name here would grab?
I think I tend to agree that Mike Babcock's probably a long shot, but he would probably be the best fit because again he runs this like McLellan and him. They same system, similar ideals and all that. And actually, if anything, you're getting the better. So you're slightly upgrading over McLellan in a way. That would be my ideal. I tend to doubt it'll happen. Like I said, though, it does kind of depend on how the best jobs play out. If the best job, the couple first jobs go, and he's not one of the first ones to land, then maybe it's a shot. But I tend to doubt it. Quick question, real quick for Ross. I know you're limited time here, but you mentioned that they don't have to hire a coach before the draft. I know in football it's extremely important that kind of coach and draft go together, but then again, in the NFL it's a little more instantaneous. Do you don't think it's as important for a coach in the draft to kind of go hand in hand? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, in the NHL, even though the game is getting younger, and there's a better chance every year of that drafted player, especially in the first round, having an opportunity to make the team, it still isn't imperative in the NHL to have your coach on board. The draft, those are decisions made by your director of draft with your general manager approving the pick and on down the line in the second, third, fourth rounds. Your coach generally has no input at all. He might watch video and give an opinion, but they're going to go with the scouts and the head director of scouting and the general manager who have seen these players that they're going to pick multiple times in person. They're going to go with those opinions first. And coach is going to take with what he has to work with, and basically, maybe that's one player in the draft that has a shot, and it's a long shot. Your 9th overall pick this year, I mean, that's in recent seasons that has had a chance to make a team, and especially with the Sharks going young, and maybe if it's a defenseman, it's a possibility. But still, I think probably that player doesn't make the Sharks next year. Just he's going to be a young kid. So no, I don't think you need that. I don't think you need that coach. But when you talk about puck possession, and that's what Doug wants from a coach, I think you better beef up your back line, and you're not going to do that in the draft, for next year. You're going to do that with free agency and making a big strike because you have a lot of assets. And if you want a puck possession team, I think you need to improve your personnel first before you throw it all on the coach and make him fix it, because he's not going to be able to fix it if he doesn't have the personnel.
Yeah, not to say that coach is unimportant, but it seems in the NHL, coaches are a little more interchangeable than other sports. Like, look at Terry Murray getting fired and Sutter taking over for the Kings. That's a great example. So, it does make sense. I mean, part of me is like, I'd like to have a coach first, just because they're all there. But then again, you make some good points there. That coach ultimately has to make do with what he has, and plus they won't see whoever they draft this year probably for at least a year, maybe 2 or 3.
If their guy is out there, and they have a list right now, and they're not going to share it with us. If their guy is out there and available, and they can get them, they'll go get them. There's no question about it. But I get a feeling that maybe their guy is still employed by one of these 16 teams that's still playing hockey.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think they would like to have their list out a little bit more before they go decide on a coach. But like you said before, Doug's got to meet with Hasse Plattner first before any of this moves along. So with that, Ross, thank you very much for joining
Sure.
us. Appreciate your time and input and info with all that's going down. We hope to do it again soon. And thank you again very much for joining us. Appreciate
Sure.
it.
My pleasure. Anytime, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ross.
Okay.
So moving on, Chris, I know your time is limited too. Uh, it, it's gotta be a little demoralizing that you're letting go a very good coach, one that has a very good reputation around the league. I mean, first and foremost, they're already saying that Todd can probably pick his spot, and essentially that'd probably be right after Babcock were to pick his spot. Essentially, a lot of talk that he has good connections with Brendan Shanahan in Toronto. Also, a good connection in Edmonton with Craig McTavish. So if he doesn't want to, if he wants to coach again, one, he's got a great opportunity to show off his coaching skills at the World Championships along with bringing Jade Woodcroft, and I would assume that that would be a package deal. But for Todd himself, he could probably handpick wherever he wants to go.
Yeah, I mean, it is disappointing to see this mutual departure. We don't know how mutual, how mutual this one was. I think it was probably a lot more mutual than the 49ers one.
Right.
But, I mean, I would curtail that disappointment by saying there is still a chance they could at least end up with a lateral move. So I'm not going to write it off just yet because, and heck, there's still a slight chance that maybe they could even arguably get an upgrade here. I like McLellan. There's a few little things about him that drive me a little batty, like some of his line combinations and lineup decisions. But overall, I really liked him. I am, you know what? Thanks, Todd. You had some really good years. We didn't win the cup, but honestly, it's probably the most successful run of Sharks hockey we've had ever. I mean, President's Trophy, 2 conference finals appearances, playoffs every year but one. So, respect to Todd McLellan. Like, I may not agree with everything he did, but that's you're never going to always agree with everything. I mean, unless they're winning cup every year, you're not going to, and even then, you probably will. I mean, I know plenty of Kings fans, and not just the bandwagoners.
Right.
Very informed Kings fans who some of the things Sutter does drives them nuts, but they will say, you know what, he's won 2 cups, so you can only complain so much. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, I'll go with wait and see here. Like, it's disappointing, but sky's not falling yet. The Sharks make a good coaching hire, have a good draft, maybe sign a good free agent, and maybe this whole offseason could actually look really good. And that's not that far-fetched. I'm not holding my breath, but it's not that far-fetched that could happen.
That's true. That's true. And while I consider myself the optimist of our whole group, something tells me that this is going to get worse before it gets better. I don't know who they can get. Yes, as Winnipeg takes back the lead. I don't know who they can get that would be an upgrade that they could actually get. I mean, unless they pull a lot of money out to get Babcock. And personally, I can't see Todd McLellan I could see him calling him up and telling him, "You sure you want to go there? I just left there. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I dealt with." I don't know. I mean, maybe John Stevens, the Kings assistant coach, or Davis Payne, who formerly coached the Blues. I don't know who they could get that could have much of an impact like Todd did. And McLellan had a great run. but I also think he needed players to kind of get him to where he was to be successful too. So it's both for both. AJ's tweeted, and again, AJ is apparently sick, although his fingers work pretty fine right now. Isn't it a coaching prerequisite for any Sharks candidates that they be comfortable putting Burns on D?
I would certainly hope not. I don't think, though. I think if Doug Wilson's still around, Burns will be on D, because I think if on the off chance, I don't think it's going to happen, but if Doug Wilson were to be let go and a different general manager came in, I think that new general manager would probably have a much easier time moving Burns to forward. I think the only prohibitive part would be the price tag. Like he would be an expensive forward, but I think they would see it as he brings more overall value to the team there, because
Right.
just what he can do at forward. What was it? So I would absolutely love to see someone from the Kings system as well. They, in spite of how ugly their game is, they are magnificent at possessing the puck and playing, northwest hockey, or sorry, north-south hockey, and driving play, going to the other end. Best defense is a good offense, and the numbers bear it out in the NHL. As far as things getting worse before it gets better, it wouldn't surprise me. And here's where I'll play the optimist. The three things I listed before: draft, free agents, coach. They hit 2 out of the 3. I think they can take a step forward, because Todd McLellan also came here at a time when he had a group that wasn't too old, wasn't too young, was primed to make a good run. And they did. They didn't win the cup, but they made a good run. And he was effective.
Yeah, I mean, he made it. He won the President's Trophy the first year, although that stunning loss to Anaheim still reeks its ugly head. And then the back-to-back trips to the Western Conference Final that looked good. They took a step back in 2012. I thought 2013, that was a very good team that could have gone a lot, especially in the shortened lockout year. Then the what is it?
I'd say arguably you could make a case that 2 of the best teams in the entire McLellan era were those 13 and 14 teams that, one came up just short to the Kings and the other one had that collapse, but both were this close to winning that, like within that much of winning that series. And they were, last year's team, in spite of that collapse, that was a really, really good team. And real quick, since I know AJ's watching, I love to mock him with the awesome beers I drink. So this is from a brewery called Toppling Goliath. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most popular breweries in the U.S., and they only distribute to Iowa, and I got some because I'm in Minnesota right now. So, haha, AJ.
Yeah, AJ, please feel better. Definitely will keep. But you know what? Generation X-Wing did make one comment that I should have thought about putting on there, and it's a name we've all heard. But you know what? Kevin Constantine.
Fuck him.
Ladies and gentlemen,
this is where like we need like one of those that wrestling music or whatever.
I'm back. AJ
he comes in swinging a wooden chair.
You believe in miracles? Yes.
What up, boys?
Yeah, right there, AJ.
Nice. Holy
right there.
This, man, my okay. Now my camera seems to have adjusted. What's happening, guys?
You're
I don't look like Wilson anymore, right?
I know you're sick, AJ, but you look kind of green right now.
A little bit. So,
oh boy,
what do we expect coming up for a coach? Is it going to be a Tom Sula situation where Doug gets a yes man, or or is it? I've seen that list. Honestly, the only one I think has half a shot in hell of getting off of that list and being the head coach for the Sharks is Granato. And the reason being, he was never really. I mean, how long was he an actual head coach in Colorado? About half a season.
Yeah, a couple.
Well, how many jobs are there as candidates, though? So
Yeah.
that's the one thing to consider also.
And isn't Boston looking for a coach as well? That seems like that would be that would fit McLellan really well.
Well, Julian, I don't think has been fired yet.
Well, it's just a matter of time.
So my question is this: is where they go? I can't see them doing anything else. I mean, is this all to kind of push Jumbo to the point of, all right, enough already, let me get the hell out of here? But then again, Jumbo has the final say, too.
Yeah, and that's because of Wilson. So it's going to be fun to see how that plays out. It's going to be really fun to see how that plays out because it's really going to tell you who was full of shit.
Right.
I mean, they sat there and said, with less than a week later, oh, okay, yeah, we squashed the beef and everything's all fine now and I respect each other and blah 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 blah. And if it comes down to, a couple, because let's go and consider Plotner may get a phone call from Thornton that we're unaware of. And Thornton forces the issue. So who knows? But if Wilson is not the GM of this team come the NHL draft, it wouldn't surprise me if Thornton had a little something to do with it.
Yeah, as far as you mentioned the whole Tom Sula situation, I think that'd be a little hard to judge in the NHL just because, as we mentioned a little earlier, like coaches are a lot more interchange. Like it's not like the NFL. Like the NFL, if you're going to change coach, usually it takes a whole season or two to really do it. Whereas in the NHL, you can fire a coach and have the new, the interim or new coach lead that team to the playoffs and even a Stanley Cup in Sutter's case that quickly because that's how fast you can plug coaches in the NHL. So it's a little harder to judge. I mean, if they promoted one of the Ice Girls, then I guess we would know it's definitely Tom Sula's situation. But yeah, like good old I'm blanking on his name right now. Our COO would be like, yeah, she's gonna wear a skirt on the bench. Yeah, Tatora. It's like, yeah, she's gonna wear a short skirt on the bench.
Well, I tweeted it out some time ago, but isn't it? It just drives me insane because there's been a couple people that I've either seen Sharks boards or on Twitter or whatnot, various social media that have defended Doug Wilson to this point, and even I believe what's his name, Adam Preteau, even tweeted out a kind of I don't know, some sort of support for Doug Wilson. And if you look at the first half of his tenure with the Sharks, those first 6 years, getting Thornton in kind of changing the Sharks, I don't know. You look at the first 6 years and what he did here. He actually did make some good choices, some good decisions, and things. The Sharks always seemed to be pointed in the right direction. And we talked about this before that it seemed as every season that came in, you were more excited for it than the one before because you felt that they were icing if it wasn't a comparable team, you thought it was at least better. And this season, just starting a year ago, it's all culminating with being up 3-0, then going out 4 straight, and ever since then, name me a decision that Wilson has made or the Sharks have made that has been something that the fan base has been happy about, like with the exception of moving, or I mean, with the exception of the Barracuda, but that's that was something that was in the works for a long time. But name me something that this fan base has a reason to be excited about that has happened since the Sharks went out.
I agree with you in some respects. I do think, well, I disagree that you can make a legitimate case in defense of Doug Wilson. I think there's sometimes when there's certain guys who are indefensible, you can make a case. I disagree with the case, but you can make it. There is actual, you can point to things like Hurdle, maybe not, the last year I think has been brutal. I can't think of a single thing in the last year that I think is good that he's done, but in the last three, because if we go only on the last year, that's just typical fan behavior. What have you done for me lately? You look at the 3 to 5 year perspective. He has made some good moves. I would argue over the last 5 years, probably it's pretty close to 50-50. Therefore, I would say it's maybe time to move on. But you can make a legitimate case in his defense, is what I would say on that matter. But yeah, I think if he is still around after his meeting with Plattner, probably he needs to have a good off season. And actually, I think even he probably would know that unless Plattner says, I really don't care, do anything you want. I have a feeling, even if he's still here, he'll probably feel some heat, and he'll probably need to make at least one good splash move. So that's my thought.
I mean, you have to reinvigorate. I hate this, make it sound like we're a Homer fan base, but I mean, tell me something within the last 2 years that we've gotten excited about outside the Stadium Series that this franchise has done. I mean,
well, if you say in the last 2 years, hurdles in the last 2 years.
Okay, what? Well, he had 4 goals in a game, and now he's taking a step back like the rest of the team, where he's supposed to be the third line center, but we barely used him as the third line center down the road.
But Eric, the Sharks.
He's still an exciting prospect. Like he's shown a lot of good stuff, and he can pretty good chance he can show that stuff again and get even better.
But the Sharks this season, they beat Anaheim and then LA and then Chicago. I mean, everybody's excited about that, right?
Yeah, but they also lost to Buffalo twice, Arizona twice, Edmonton twice, and Florida twice.
Yeah, but that was nothing to be excited about. Beating Anaheim and then LA and then Chicago was very exciting.
Oh, that's great. Meanwhile, Anaheim's playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
As is Chicago.
And so is Chicago. I mean, they're playing to go for the big shiny cup that we've decided not to give a damn about because we have to go back 1 step to go 2 steps forward. It's kind of tough to do that when you don't have that massive developmental system. But hey, the Worcester Sharks made the playoffs, so I'm obviously wrong. So watch, Roy Sommers, your Sharks head coach next year, and when that happens, oh crap, you are gonna hear.
Oh God. That would be a Tom Sula situation right there.
Exactly.
Although the only difference would be no knife in McLellan's back.
And
if that did happen, Eric would just start doing these on his own. He wouldn't even need us. It would just be 30 minutes of rant mode.
Right. I would just be like.
Generation X would have to make an Eric like Hulk smash graphic.
Well,
don't trust me. And these are some of the tweets I actually favorited earlier. Lim to the Limit said, this wouldn't have happened if we had a normal 7-game exit last year. None of this year would have happened.
Oh, that's.
I agree.
I would agree because it seems like the mindset of this team they haven't been able to get over that. I don't know if they need Tony Robbins to be their new head coach or something,
or Dr. Harry Edwards. I think he's a sports psychologist, so he needs to get into the Sharks locker room quickly.
Well, whoever it is, but
and management's reaction to the whole thing, like if that had been a 3-1 lead and they'd blown that, management still would have been set. But it's the whole thing. You can flip a coin, and you can get a bunch straight in a row, and then you could have it go the opposite way. It's just it's those games were large. I mean, like there was a lot of balances that kind of determined that. Like it sucks that it ended up that way, but that's how it ended up, and I think management overreacted.
Yeah,
Right.
It went 7 games. Let's.
If it had gone like it did in the 2013 season, where each team pretty much alternated wins.
Yeah.
Sure, I don't think any of this would be happening. But my thinking is that albeit that's Totoro's decision to fire Remenda, so that's one thing. Which, by the way, who's the rah-rah cheerleader right now near the Oilers organization, even though it doesn't work for them, saying, get Todd in here. And like heck, that's probably Drew right now.
Absolutely. But for the tweet of the game, or for the tweet of the night, of course it comes from Gen X, quote unquote, you can make a case for defending Doug Wilson. Obviously he was quoting Chris, and he said, someone's really celebrating 420 with that comment.
Like I said before, it's kind of ironic that they announced this on 420 because what have the Sharks been smoking?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
see, and unfortunately, I'm in Minnesota on 420, where you have to go to some really shady places to get weed. I mean, what the hell, man?
All right, you wrote in there, let's hit the shirt before I bounce. What shirt are we talking about?
Okay, what shirt are we talking about? Holy shit, did you see Doug Wilson's shirt?
Oh! Okay.
I mean,
mind you.
My God!
Okay, mind you, I was at work when both of these pressers went down, and it wasn't until AJ tweeted out a picture of Doug who was in a freaking golf shirt. Now, excuse me, you're right near Valley Fair and Santana Row is just a few miles away. You could easily, quickly have gone to get a shirt. I'm sure Randy has a tie in the office that he could have used. But come on, you show up in a golf shirt?
It's not like they don't have a store full of Sharks gear, like within 100 feet of where he was having his press conference at. So I'm not sure about that. The other interesting thing is Ross McKeon, and unfortunately I wasn't able to be on with him, or I would have hopefully remembered to ask. He had actually pointed out that generally when Doug does these things, he has a Sharks logo somewhere on his clothes, and that he was, maybe this is just, maybe it's a tinfoil hat thing, but maybe this is kind of a signature or kind of a move that shows, maybe Wilson is making a lateral or vertical move up the ladder, and we maybe should expect to see a new GM by draft time.
Right. I mean, if that's the case, does Doug get a say in who he picks as his successor?
Yeah, probably much like Johnny Carson did.
Weird world stuff. So basically, I'm sure we've lost everybody to the Warrior game now.
Didn't even realize they were playing.
The sporting agenda.
Eric, dude, you better reset your AOL, dude, because you're getting about every 5th word coming through.
That's freaking awesome.
One last thing. While Eric's AOL recovers for a minute here, just real quick, our friend Generation X-Wing, friend of the program here, he did his nice little Charlie Brown graphic and all that, the little Lucy and the football thing. Well, he did that, first of all, and made it look a little bit like Doug Wilson, like, hold on a minute, you need the shirt. So he was kind enough to make this happen. We even have the stripy shirt, and the expression matches Doug Wilson so perfectly. The hair, the overbaked tan,
The smirk.
props Generation X-Wing. This is perfection. It made my night so much better because, yeah, that's pretty much perfect in every way.
But you know what's funny? Why is Doug Wilson able to hold the Stanley Cup? He's never won one.
Oh. Yeah. So that was kind of my last little blow here. I'm gonna jump off and let you guys finish up here because I'm 2 times over here in Minneapolis. I'm hoping to go to the game on Wednesday. Tonight's I was down in St. Paul a little bit earlier. These fans are getting crazy for the Wild. They go in wild and all that fun. Yeah. So I'm out. I'll catch you all later. Have a good night.
Good night, Chris. Take care. AJ, as we kind of just wrap it up here, now what?
Yeah, exactly. Now what? Like I said earlier, you had 12 months. 12 months ago, we were up 3-0, and we're very excited about where this franchise was going. Fast forward a year later, and we've had, obviously the outdoor game is a bit of a highlight because of the event. Obviously the final score, not so much, but it was, a hell of an event. But in those 12 months, we've seen the most beloved broadcaster be fired, the addition of Ice Girls that pissed off the fans, the addition of those retarded CGI graphics at home games, the signing of the likes of John Scott, retaining Scott Hannon, while saying that a lot of talking out of your ass, where it's, oh, we moved Shepard so we can put Hurdle at center, and he started 1 game at center. So, okay, it sounds like you guys are full of shit. Then it's the idea of, Burns is going to stay at D, and this is where we believe he should be, and blah, blah, blah. And then within a week or so of being out of the playoffs, then all of a sudden Wilson appeared to say, well, we're open to the idea of maybe putting him back at forward, or maybe this wasn't the proper fit. It's just so much talking out of your ass. And then the perfect thing for me today was the first question that Doug Wilson was asked in today's press conferences, paraphrasing, but it was, why isn't T-Mac the right coach now? Why the guy who's going to, be the head coach for Team Canada, but he's not good enough for you anymore, despite the, tons of the good amount of success he's had here. Why is he not good enough? And Wilson spoke for about a minute and a half, and it was a lot of compliments and praise about Todd McLellan. And I was hoping that the guy who asked the question said, well, those are some great compliments, Doug, and whatnot. Now, if you could get back to actually answering the question that I asked you, that'd be great.
Right.
It was just a bunch of double talk. And I don't know. It's funny that he sits there and he talks about trying to be transparent, and he's so murky. I don't understand how he could even say that. Or my other personal funny one in the presser, with the 2 times he said, I'll be honest here. And I was just like, yeah, sure. So who knows? It is so goddamn dysfunctional there right now. What a difference a year makes, man. That's all you can really say.
Yeah, I kind of feel I kind of disagree with what Blaine Teal just put. T-Mac was not fired. He left because DW is an overreaching fender who undercut him. I would say this. Yes. I would say you Todd any favors by helping him with what he has. By all means, if you had to put out a line of Nieto, Tierney, Goodrow, and you're expecting him to be the second, because we really heard these guys were going to be good. It's tough to do. Plus, your fourth line ended up being John Scott. You didn't get Rafi Torres back because this on his leg. We hope he's ready to go for training camp. Huge help for that. But really, if here is he one going to want to be here, and two,
you better put some more. You better put some more coins in the meter because you're breaking up.
I don't know what it is. I heard the reason from streaming.
Well,
with that, we'll just.
I can't hear a word you're saying right now.
At all.
I'm literally getting every 10th word, and your picture and your audio are completely off.
1 sec.
We have to go into the settings for Windows. While he does that, I'm going to be really interested to see the starting lines for next season. Is it going to be Thornton with Pavelski and Carlson again? Is it going to be Thornton and Burns and Hurdle? Well, the success we had 2 seasons ago. Will Marlowe remain on the second line? Especially if younger guys end up stepping up. We saw what just a fierce competitor Chris Tierney was there towards the end. I mean, he was like a ray of sunshine in those last 20 games on an otherwise dismal season. But you obviously have Couture. Couture, Marlowe, Tierney, maybe fashion a second line out of that. I still think Nieto needs to be third line or lower at this point. But you have to consider that you're going to go into training camp with a healthy Mike Brown, a healthy Rafi Torres. I can't imagine John Scott stays here. Who knows if Mike Brown sticks around? But you've got the young guys who made some impact this year, like all the first year guys. Whether it's Carlson, Tierney, what have you, and you're going to expect that there's going to be some new faces. Whether Goldobin is ready to go, maybe with that 9th pick, they're able to find another Couture. Somebody that's ready to jump in now. So there's only, and let's be honest, I think we all really, really hope that they find some quality defense in this fucking draft this year.
Wow.
Yeah, let's hope for that.
I'm looking at all the responses. And by the way, am I coming in clear?
Yes, you do seem a bit clear, yes.
Okay. I'm looking at all the little responses here. Bleeding Teal, he was an undercut. 88 back to D was DW. No captain was DW. Among several other calls, DW made that an overall team act. That's true, although I believe we heard a report that DW wanted the name Pavelski captain. McLellan said no. NHL Ties apparently is watching us. Good evening to you. Forgive me for no tie. And he has a nice little gif going about like an old robot. Thanks a lot. Chris has chimed in, hashtag Pucknology After Dark, sort of, except when Eric's internet is like the Sharks in February. That's a very good one.
It's a brilliant hashtag.
That's a very good one. King Shark 49, not surprised by it all, really. McLellan, I think, began to realize the Sharks are a lost cause. DW's ruined them. Generation X-Wing, exactly. Guy had another year on the deal. You don't walk from money if you believe in the organization.
Well, I mean, I don't know that he's necessarily walking away from money per se, because he's gonna get paid next year. He's probably
gonna get a bigger pay than he is right now.
Yeah. So I don't think he's but it's a valid point that Gen X is making, is that, you know, they can sit there and say, oh, it was a mutual parting, and other people will say, you know, blowhards like Ray Ratto are going to sit there and constantly hammer down but let's call it what it was. He was fired. It's like, I think you need to read a little bit more into this. It sounds pretty obvious that Wilson, or McLellan, just wanted to get the fuck out of here. I mean, he said it in his morning call. For those of you who didn't hear any of the comments, he essentially said, it's quoted as saying that he asked Wilson some questions, and he didn't necessarily like the answers that were coming back. When I hear that as the quote, and I hear that when he's talking in the media, you know, I'm thinking, if I'm talking to my boss and I'm asking questions about the direction of where they're going to go, and if I don't like the response, and I know that there are 5 other companies out there that all want my services, I'm gonna get the fuck out of Dodge. It's like, you know, hey, get me off this fucking Titanic, man. I don't, you know, why would I want to stay here? So, you know, read into what you will. You know, Ratto, I don't know what the hell. Well, you know, it is 420, so.
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with him that he